When Michael bought his modest home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, he thought he had finally achieved the stability he'd been working for his entire life. The house wasn't extravagant, just a tidy 3-bedroom with a small yard and a fresh coat of paint, but it was his. Like every property in the community, his home was governed by a homeowners association. At first he didn't mind. The HOA promised to keep the neighborhood clean, maintain the shared areas, and protect property values. It started with a letter, a short, curt notice in his mailbox, written in stiff legal language, claiming that he had an unpaid HOA fee of $50. Michael was surprised. He was meticulous about bills and couldn't remember missing a payment. Still, he assumed it was a simple clerical error. He logged into his bank account, checked his records, and confirmed that every payment had cleared. Confident it would be resolved quickly, he set the letter aside. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't so polite. It stated that his account was delinquent, and threatened to place a lien on his property if he did not pay immediately. Confused, Michael called the HOA office. After sitting on hold for nearly an hour, he finally spoke to a board member named Patricia. She insisted the fee was valid and claimed there were late penalties now attached. Michael explained that he had proof of payment, but Patricia dismissed his concerns, saying, "If you don't pay, we'll escalate the matter." The escalation came faster than expected. Within days, Michael received a third notice, this time from the HOA's law firm. The language was aggressive, warning that foreclosure proceedings could begin if the balance was not settled. Michael couldn't believe what he was reading. $50, or so they claimed, had now ballooned with fabricated fees and legal costs. Michael began to investigate. He reviewed every payment he'd ever made, every receipt, and every bank transfer. The records were spotless. There was no missed payment. He drove to the HOA office to speak to someone face to face, but Patricia refused to meet with him. Other board members wouldn't return his calls. It became clear that this wasn't just a clerical error. This was deliberate. Neighbors began whispering. Some had received similar letters over trivial amounts, $20 here, $75 there, and many had simply paid to avoid trouble. Michael wasn't willing to bow to intimidation. Something about this felt deeply wrong. Why was an HOA threatening to take people's homes over petty amounts of money? As he stood in his driveway one evening, staring at yet another notice taped to his door, Michael realized this was no longer just about $50. It was about power, and someone in the HOA was abusing it. Michael decided to fight back, even if it meant a long and ugly battle. But he had no idea just how deep the corruption went, or how dangerous his defiance would become. The HOA's hidden agenda. Michael spent the next week gathering every document he could find, HOA bylaws, meeting minutes, and even past newsletters. What he found was alarming. The HOA board had quietly added new enforcement rules over the past year, allowing them to issue liens over even the smallest unpaid fees. Many of these changes hadn't been voted on by residents at all, even though the bylaws clearly required it. The deeper Michael dug, the more suspicious the HOA looked. He discovered that Patricia, the board member who refused to meet him, had been signing off on nearly every fine in the neighborhood. Even worse, the HOA had been hiring the same law firm for every dispute, and that firm was charging outrageous legal fees, sometimes 10 times higher than the original fines. Michael decided to visit a neighbor named George, a retired accountant who had mentioned receiving similar letters. George's kitchen table was covered with paperwork, HOA statements, invoices, and notices of delinquency. George explained that many residents had quietly paid just to avoid foreclosure threats. A few had even sold their homes in distress, and oddly enough, the same real estate agent was involved in each sale. Michael began to suspect a larger scheme. Was the HOA deliberately pushing people out to profit from resales? Determined to expose the corruption, Michael attended the next HOA board meeting. It was tense from the start. When he calmly presented proof that his dues were current, Patricia dismissed it as irrelevant. She claimed their accounting records showed otherwise and ordered him to pay the fine or face the consequences. When Michael demanded an independent audit, the board quickly voted it down without discussion. The few residents in attendance shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Outside the meeting, Michael overheard two board members talking in hushed tones about another property hitting the market soon. That's when he realized this wasn't just about him. The HOA was targeting multiple homeowners, manufacturing debts to pressure them into selling cheap. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. By now, Michael's mailbox was flooded with threatening letters. The debt had supposedly grown from $50 to over $1,000 with added penalties and attorney's fees. But Michael refused to pay a dime. He filed formal complaints with a state HOA oversight agency and contacted a local investigative journalist. The journalist was intrigued. There had been whispers of HOA abuse in nearby communities, but no hard proof. As Michael prepared his evidence, he started noticing strange things around his property. Car parked across the street at odd hours. Someone leaving flyers on his door that read, "Pay your dues or move out." Late one night, his trash cans were knocked over and spray painted with the word, "Deadbeat." It was clear the HOA was trying to intimidate him, but Michael wasn't scared. If anything, it strengthened his resolve. They had picked the wrong homeowner to bully. He was going to uncover everything: the financial fraud, the illegal fines, the backroom deals. And when he did, Patricia and her allies would regret ever sending that first letter. The next step was dangerous but necessary. Michael planned to secretly record the next HOA board meeting and confront them with undeniable evidence. But he didn't know they were already plotting their own move against him, one that would escalate the fight beyond anything he imagined. Michael spent the following days meticulously preparing for his next move. He gathered his bank statements, letters, and copies of HOA bylaws into a single binder. Every page was neatly tabbed and organized. He also purchased a discreet recording device small enough to hide in his shirt pocket. His plan was simple: attend the next HOA meeting, stay calm, present his evidence, and catch Patricia and the board contradicting themselves on tape. But while Michael was planning his strategy, the HOA was planning theirs. Unbeknownst to him, Patricia had scheduled an emergency vote with the other board members. They claimed it was to address ongoing delinquency issues in the community. In reality, it was designed to authorize legal action against Michael specifically. By the time the meeting was posted on the community bulletin board, most homeowners were unaware of what was really on the agenda. The night of the meeting arrived. Michael walked in with his binder and recording device, greeted only by cold stares from the board. A few neighbors were in attendance, curious but silent. Patricia wasted no time calling the meeting to order, launching into a lengthy speech about homeowners who failed to pay their fair share. Though she didn't name Michael at first, it was obvious who she meant. When it came time for community comments, Michael calmly stepped forward. He laid out his proof: receipts, bank statements, even notarized letters from his bank verifying payment. He spoke clearly and firmly, careful to stay composed while his hidden recorder captured every word. Patricia and the other board members shifted uncomfortably but stuck to their story, insisting their records were correct and his were incomplete. Then the ambush came. Patricia announced that the board had already voted in private to authorize foreclosure proceedings against his property if he didn't pay immediately. Gasps filled the room. Michael tried to object, pointing out that such a vote was illegal under their own bylaws, but Patricia pounded her gavel and declared the matter closed. That night, Michael reviewed his recording. Not only had Patricia lied about the payment, but she also openly admitted the board held a private vote, a direct violation of state HOA law. It was the smoking gun he needed. He sent copies of the recording and his documents to the investigative journalist he'd contacted earlier, who promised to dig deeper. But Michael wasn't finished. He wanted to see just how deep the corruption went. Over the next week, He quietly visited other homeowners who had been threatened with fines. Their stories were eerily similar. Small alleged debts inflated into thousands of dollars, followed by pressure to sell their homes. One elderly couple admitted they sold their house at a loss just to avoid the stress. Michael took detailed notes, adding each story to his growing case file. Then something unsettling happened. A letter arrived from the HOA's attorney demanding immediate payment of over $5,000 or face foreclosure within 30 days. The amount had jumped again without explanation. Michael also noticed the same mysterious car parked near his house late at night, its engine idling in the dark. It was clear that Patricia and her allies were growing desperate. But Michael had a plan of his own. At the next meeting, he would publicly confront Patricia with his recording, and he would not be alone. The journalist had agreed to attend, along with a state regulator who had taken an interest in Michael's complaint. Patricia didn't know it yet, but her days of unchecked power were numbered. What Michael didn't realize was that Patricia had one last trick to play, a move so aggressive it would push the entire neighborhood into open conflict. Michael prepared carefully, gathering proof and recording the HOA's lies during a tense meeting. Patricia announced an illegal vote to foreclose on his home, exposing their corruption on tape. Michael compiled other neighbors' stories of fabricated debts and escalating threats. With evidence mounting, he planned to confront Patricia publicly with a journalist and state regulator present, unaware she was preparing an even bolder move to crush his resistance.